Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the Distance Learning and Telemedicine Grant Program. I'd like to turn it over to Teresa Hunkapiller. Teresa?
Good morning, everyone, and I wanted to just welcome you. And if you've been in one of these webinars before, you will know that we move very quickly. We've got a lot of information to cover, but I do have some help this week. I have Mariah Pope that's going to present the first half of the webinar, and then I'll pick back up and where she leaves off, and then we'll go into the questions and answers. So without further ado, Mariah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mariah Pope, and as Teresa explained, we are going to share a lot of information today and move pretty quickly to allow for questions at the end of the presentation. Beyond covering the program content and highlighting changes from last year, I will emphasize areas that have proved to be challenging in the past. So today we will begin with a brief introduction of the DLT program. Then I will move on to explain eligibility requirements. Teresa will then explain how to complete an application and discuss some of those resources to assist you with completing an application. Last but not least, we will allow for questions as time permits. I will begin by providing an introduction to the DLT program. So the DLT program is codified in statute as shown here, 7 U.S. Code 950 AAA. And this statute established the program. Title 7 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 1734, also known as 7 CFR 1734, governs how the program is implemented. When trying to get a complete picture of eligibility and the program requirements, applicants should review the most recent NOSA as well as the application guide, as both of these documents discuss the particulars that apply to the current funding opportunity. Now, before we get into detail of the program, it is very important to understand how RUS defines distance learning and telemedicine. So distance learning means an interactive telecommunications link to an end user through the use of eligible equipment for the purpose of providing educational programs, instruction, or information which originates in one area, whether rural or not, to students and teachers who are located in rural areas. Telemedicine is an interactive telecommunications link to an end user through the use of eligible equipment, which electronically links medical professionals at separate sites to exchange healthcare information in audio, video, graphic, or other formats for the purpose of providing improved healthcare services, primarily to residents of rural areas. Yes, the program is basically a program to fund equipment, but the focus is not on building networks. The focus is on the equipment needed to deliver specific services to benefit rural residents. All right, so if you're familiar with the DLT program, you will notice some changes for fiscal year 2024, which include the special consideration scoring criteria has been updated, so please pay particular attention to this section of the presentation. Video conferencing platform licenses that are directly related to the funded program is now an eligible grant purpose. And for non-tribal applicants with the DLT project on or over tribal lands, this requirement for a tribal resolution has also been updated. And we will discuss this a little bit further in detail later in the presentation. Now we will transition into applicant and project eligibility as well as eligible grant purposes. To be eligible for the fiscal year 2024 DLT program, applicants must be one of the eligible entity types shown here. So you must be an incorporated organization or an Indian tribe or tribal organization, a state or local unit of government, or a consortium. This list of eligible entity types has not changed from the last funding cycle, and same as last year, individuals are not eligible applicants. Another eligibility requirement is that you must operate a rural community facility or deliver DLT services to entities that operate a rural community facility or deliver to residents of rural areas. Each applicant must provide written evidence of its legal capacity to contract with RUS to obtain the grant. And I will provide more detail regarding the legal existence and how important it is to use the entity's legal name on all documents. And further, each applicant must be able to implement the project, own the assets, and also comply with all program requirements. Now, as you saw on the last slide, there was a list of eligible entities, one of those entities being a consortium. A consortium is defined as a combination of entities formed to undertake a purpose, which in this instance would be the purpose for which the DLT financial assistance is being requested. For the DLT program, we will use the term consortium in two ways. There's a formal consortium and an informal consortium. For the program purposes, a formal consortium is a legally formed entity with the ability to contract with the federal government. The formal consortium can apply as an official entity and be responsible for the project in its entirety. For the DLT program, we have a specific purpose for the term informal consortium. We will only use this term when we are referring to a group of entities choosing to share grant responsibilities and asset ownership. One entity will be the fiscal agent or host organization who will apply on behalf of the group, but each co-applicant must meet the program eligibility criteria and contract with RUS on its own behalf. Again, please note, if there will be just one entity responsible for the project in its entirety and owning all of the project assets, we will not call that an informal consortium. All right, so in addition to be eligible for a DLT grant, projects and applications must have a minimum rurality score of 20 points. Secondly, the application must include a matching contribution of at least 15% of the requested grant amount. And note, the matching funds must be used for eligible grant purposes. The third is a tribal government resolution or letter of consent. If you are a non-tribal applicant who proposes the delivery of services on or over tribal lands, then a letter of consent is required from each tribal council with jurisdiction over the tribal lands to be served. However, if the project is proposing infrastructure construction or deployment on or over tribal lands, then a tribal resolution is required from the tribal government with jurisdiction over the tribal lands. This is very, very important because any non-tribal applicant that fails to meet this requirement will not be eligible for funding. And you can find a sample tribal resolution in Appendix A of the DLT guide. And also, as published in the NOSA, the minimum grant amount that can be requested is $50,000 and the maximum grant amount is $1 million. Now, in the next few slides, we will cover eligible and ineligible grant purposes. First, I will start with the eligible grant purposes. These eligible purposes can be found in the DLT regulation in NOSA. So the first eligible purpose is the acquisition and installation by lease or purchase of eligible equipment. I would like to emphasize that all eligible equipment for your project must be new and non-depreciated. The eligible equipment can be leased for the 3-year period of the grant, but the leased equipment must still be new and non-depreciated. Now, one hiccup with leasing equipment is sustainability. You must provide detailed information explaining how the project will be sustained once the grant is no longer paying for the leased equipment. All right, purchases of extended warranties, site licenses, and maintenance contracts are also eligible purposes, but they must be associated with the new equipment being purchased for the project. And they cannot be for a period longer than the 3 years from the date of equipment installation. Now, please note the renewal of existing licenses or new license agreements on existing equipment are not eligible for funding. However, acquiring or developing instructional programming that is a capital asset is an eligible purpose, but it must be by a third party. The cost associated with technical assistance and instruction for using eligible equipment is also eligible, but it is limited to the 10% of the requested grant amount. Another eligible grant purpose is the purchasing and installing of broadband facilities. However, these facilities must be owned by the applicant, used for DLT services, and they cannot exceed the 20% of the requested grant amount. And I will talk about this a little bit further when we reach the environmental impact and historic preservation section. All right, so here are some examples of eligible equipment. Now, this is not an all-inclusive list, and just because something is listed doesn't mean that it is automatically eligible. So we have computer hardware and software, audio-visual equipment, monitors and other display devices, telemedical devices, broadband facilities, and again, it must be owned by the applicant, cybersecurity software, which must be directly related to the funded project. And new this year, we have video conferencing platform licenses. And for this to be eligible, it must be directly related to the funded project. It cannot exceed 10% of the requested grant amount. It is also limited to the 3 years from the release of funds. And the quantity of licenses cannot exceed the number of end user devices being purchased for the project. The application must demonstrate that the predominant purpose of each item meets the definition of distance learning or telemedicine as defined by the program. The application guide also includes some additional examples of eligible equipment. However, I didn't go into that for detail due to time. All right. Now, ineligible grant purposes. The DLT regulation in NOSA also outlines these ineligible grant purposes. These ineligible grant purposes can be seen on this slide and also the next slide. Now, please note application preparation costs, salaries, wages, employee benefits, internet service, and the cost of medical or educational services, which may include subscriptions to service providers or service platforms, are not eligible grant purposes. And it is very important for me to stress that the DLT program does not pay for the delivery of services. All right, and here are some additional ineligible grant purposes. I recommend reviewing the fiscal year 2024 DLT application guide for more information on ineligible grant purposes. All right. Now that we have covered some basic eligibility requirements of the DLT program, we will now discuss how to complete an application. So before you apply for the DLT program, there are some important registration requirements that you should know about. The first requirement that I'm going to cover is your Sam.gov registration. All applicants must have an active Sam.gov registration prior to registering in Grants.gov. And please keep in mind, it can take about 12 to 15 business days after submitting your SAM registration for it to become active. This registration is required to obtain a unique entity identifier or UEI, and that is needed to submit a DLT application. There is no fee for registering in Sam.gov, nor is there a fee for the system to assign an UEI. But it is very, very important for the UEI to belong to the applicant, not an affiliate, not a subsidiary, nor a parent company. It must belong to the applicant. And the name reported in Sam.gov should be the entity's legal name. Now, if it happens that there is a discrepancy between what is submitted in Sam.gov and what the legal name actually is, please provide an explanation and have the name updated in Sam.gov. And if the entity happens to operate under a DBA, there are fields to enter the doing business as name within SAM. Additionally, all applicants must make the financial assistance representations and certifications in Sam.gov. And I will talk about that a little bit further on the next slide. All right, so the financial assistance representation and certifications made in Sam.gov covers many compliance requirements required to under the DLT program. The system will ask, does the entity wish to apply for federal finance assistance, and the system will automatically default to no. So you must update this to reflect yes. And the next slide will show a screenshot of what that screen will look like. So as you can see, the default answer to the financial assistance representation question is no. And again, this will need to be updated to reflect yes. Now, if you have previously completed the Sam.gov registration, please check to make sure that it hasn't expired or will not expire between April 29th, which is when the DLT window closes. Please also make sure that all information is current and that this cert is updated to reflect yes. All right. So this slide here is just recapping that you would need to have a Sam.gov account in order to obtain a UEI, which the UEI is required to apply for the DLT grant. Again, the Sam.gov registration needs to be completed before submitting an application in Grants.gov. And it can take between 12 to 15 business days before becoming active. You will also need a login.gov account, which requires an active email address to register. You will also need to create a Grants.gov applicant account to submit a DLT application. Now, for this Grants.gov account, you will need an email address, a phone number, organization name, organization's active UEI, and login.gov account. You will create the username and password and then link your Grants.gov account to your login.gov account. Now, again, please be sure that you use the entity's legal name when conducting all official business, and that includes Sam.gov, Grants.gov, and applying for federal financial assistance, such as the DLT program. Now, Teresa will go over the details of the components of a complete application.
Okay, and thank you so much, Mariah. It was much more fun listening to you present than it was presenting myself. So, thank you so much, and you did an excellent job on that. She's also going to help us stay on track for time this week because I spent a little more time on that last week than I would like to have. The components of an application are shown on the screen now. It goes all the way from the standard form 424 down to any supplemental information you might want to present us with. If you have something you want to give us that does not fit easily into any of the other categories, feel free to put it in the supplemental information. I'll go in a little further into each of these. The only one I won't delve too deep into is the standard form 424. On it, you fill that particular form out inside the Grants.gov application portal. Everything else are attachments to be added using block 15 on the standard 424. I know if you've never been into the Grants.gov system before, you go in there and you see, oh, there's nothing else to fill out and I don't know how to attach. Be sure to go back and look at block 15 on the SF form 424, which is the application for federal assistance. And you can upload as many attachments there as you want. I do not know the system capacity, but I've never had anybody exceed it. So I think we're good there. All right, as Mariah had mentioned, definitely use your legal name on everything. You'll hear me say that about 12 more times before we finish. We also have some very important sample worksheets for you to use in completing an application. These are indeed just sample worksheets. They are not mandatory. However, I will tell you, there's been a lot of work that has gone into these. And if you will use them, information pulls from the very first one, which is your description of project sites, as much information as possible pulls all the way into the other documents. It's very important that you keep your sites with the same name and in the same order in the site worksheet as you show them in your rurality and your economic need and in everything else throughout your application. So these are just a very big plus if you choose to use them. Again, I'm saying they're not mandatory, but extremely helpful if you choose to take advantage of what we've made available. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. And we're going to talk about the description of project sites worksheet. So on this slide, you'll see a small picture of what the site worksheet looks like. And another thing I'll point out, through all of these at the top, it's going to say applicant's legal name. If you use the worksheets that we provided, you should only have to put that in once, and it should carry forward to all of your other documents and the worksheet packet. Also, where you have the site numbers and the site name, which is too small to see on the screen, and the site type, those will carry forward. So once you've done it, then you can take advantage of having entered it once and not have to put it on every form. It's very descriptive. It tells you what we need. We need to know the participating hubs, even if they're not getting equipment. We need to know any end users, and to be an end user, you must get equipment. And we will need to describe any hub end users, and that will be someone who is providing both functions as the originator of content, or I say content in the context of education, but the delivery of service, where it originates, is what we consider a hub. And the end user, of course, is the person receiving the service. It is possible for one location to be both a hub and an end user. If they are, that means there has to be another hub somewhere delivering services to the end user that is sitting there as a hub end user. A little confusing, but I'm sure that we can clear that up if need be. You will have to list everything in the grant that is receiving funds and or providing a critical piece of the project, which could mean a hub that is not in need of any funded equipment under this grant project. So let's go a little bit further. I kind of covered part of what is the descriptions of a site, and let's go on and cover what is in the executive summary. The executive summary basically gives us the first overall view of your entire project. It's very detailed in the application guide and in the regulations of what needs to go into the executive summary. This gives us a good idea of the breakdown of how much is going to be grant, how much is going to be matched, whether this is going to be distance learning or it's going to be telemedicine. Even if your project is 50-50 on the distance learning and telemedicine, please designate for us what you consider to be the primary purpose. We need that for back office and accounting purposes. So we really do encourage projects that address both distance learning and telemedicine, but you must choose one to call your primary reason. We also need you to tell us if your project is proposing to reduce substance use disorder in rural areas. And you need to tell us if you are requesting special consideration points, and if you are, under which category. Your project might address more than one special consideration category, and that's wonderful, but you can only claim the 10 points once. We would like to know, however, if you are addressing more than one category. We cover this a little bit more over on the special consideration worksheet a little bit later. Okay, let's move forward And we'll cover a few more things. You need to tell us about your telecommunications system, what it is now, what it will be when you get the project implemented. We need to know that the facilities to be constructed do not duplicate existing facilities, or you're not going to duplicate the delivery of existing services. Of course, we've already mentioned that you will need to cover the location of each end user and hub end user site. So let's move a little further into the executive summary. And I will hit on one more item that is very important. We ask that you include a publicly releasable project description. There are examples of this on page 16 of the application guide. We give you an example of one for telemedicine and one for telehealth. And of course, if you're doing a project that covers both, you can just blend those into your description. But you can also look on the website and see descriptions of past awards. It doesn't need to be long. There are certain details that need to be included. And with this, our examples should guide you straight through what we need on your project description that we can release should you be awarded a grant. All right, let's move on into some scoring criteria. We did mention, Mariah mentioned that the scoring criteria has changed a little bit for the special considerations. The other scoring criteria has not changed, other than we are now using the 2020 census. Last year, we were still using the 2010. On your reality calculation worksheet, you will be using information at the community level, whereas I'll discuss in a few minutes on the economic need calculation that will be using a different set of criteria. For the reality scoring, you'll be needing to refer both to the DLT map, which is a link to that is on our website, and under the to apply tab. And you will also need to consult the census. A link to that is also available. And guidance for this is provided at the end of this presentation. We will not go through step-by-step demo, but there's some really good information to the appendix to this webinar that will give you good guidance in going through the DLT map and the census data. Okay, you can get up to 40 points. In this, it gives you the breakdown. Of course, the more rural, the more points you will get. 5,000 and under gets 40 points. Anything over 20,000 is considered urban and 0 points. That does not mean an urban site could not be included. You're just not going to get any points. And if your reality score drops below 20 points, then you're not an eligible, it's not an eligible project. So just keep that in mind. And when you're using a non-fixed end user site, as in the equipment will be moved from one location to another, you have to use the hub location for this calculation. And doing so, the hub location might be in an urban area. And if it is, it's okay, but you're not going to get any points for it. And that could definitely affect your eligibility or the ranking in scoring when we get to the final point of making applications. Again, more information on this is in the application guide. So let's move on to the economic scoring sheet. And again, there's a small little picture of what it looks like. Again, things will move over from your site worksheet, flow right into this. And this information comes from the county level, and it's pulled from SAPE, which is Small Area Income and Poverty Estimates. This is also located on the DLT website so that you can conveniently look these up. The actual final score will be the average of these scores. You do not use a pure hub in the calculation of rurality or in the calculation of your economic need. but you should go ahead and list those on your score sheet. Just don't use them in your calculation. It could be that when we read your application, we think that what you listed as a pure hub is actually a hub end user. And in doing so, we will need that information to calculate your actual economic needs score. All right, let's go a little bit further and I will tell you a little bit more about this. This is where you can get up to a total of 30 points. Again, the percentage of poverty drives the score so that we are meeting, hopefully, allocating the majority of our funds to areas that need it the most. So this gives you an idea of how you stack up. If your poverty percentage is in, 10% or less, you're not going to get any points, which means when it comes down to the competitive scoring, you might be at a disadvantage. Okay, let's move on to special consideration. Again, this is a little snippet of what the sheet looks like. We do need you to tell us which category, well, if you are or are not choosing to request special consideration points, like I said, the maximum is 10. And if you are, under what category are you claiming points? If you are eligible for points and meet more than one category, we've made a place for you to mark those over on your special consideration sample worksheet. This is a good thing if you qualify for more than one, or you think you do. If you think you qualify for more than one, and should you not be eligible under one, we will fall back to that second category. And should you be eligible under it, you're still going to get your 10 points. So pay special attention. We'll go on to the next screen and I'll tell you a little bit more about the categories. Under creating more and better markets, there is a category for the distressed communities. And to get points under this, the project has to have at least one end user site in a distressed community. On the map that it's also built into the DLT map that you can go and you can catch these. If the score for the community is 80 or more, you are eligible for these points. And remember, this is just one end user site in one of these areas make you eligible for the maximum 10 points. All right, the next item is projects advancing rural justice, place-based equity and opportunity. There are 3 ways to get the 10 points for this. The first way is under the social vulnerability index. This too is on the map, and you can score 10 points if one of your end users falls in a location that has a 0.75 or higher on the SVI index. Puerto Rico, Guam, and other locations and tribal areas are considered, the Hawaiian tribal areas are considered socially vulnerable, so they are eligible for the 10 points. And when I say their applications, it has to be an application from that location, not just having an end user site there. So, and I think I might have just crossed some things up. I did. Let me retract that. You will get the 10 points if you have an end user site there. There is a criteria that comes up a few minutes later about the matching requirement, and the matching requirement is not required for Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, Palau, the Marshall Islands, federal states of Micronesia, and U.S. Virgin Islands, and Hawaiian Census Tribal. So I want to clear that up. One end user site there is eligible. Any application that has an end user site there can get those 10 points. There is another avenue of getting 10 points, and that is if you are a non-tribal entity serving on tribal lands. Again, this was mentioned earlier. If you do this, whether you're asking for points or not, if you are a non-tribal entity, you must get tribal consent. If that includes the building of broadband, it must be a tribal resolution. If it does not include the building of broadband facilities, it can simply be a letter of consent. Okay, the last point for getting special consideration is that any application submitted by an recognized tribe or wholly owned entity of a tribe is eligible for the 10 points. Okay, that kind of wraps up the special consideration section. We're going to go to the needs and benefits. And yes, this is a little repetitive of the economic needs score that we do earlier, but we don't want you just to simply repeat what you gave us in that worksheet that you pulled from the state scores. This is to give us a good, clear picture of the needs in the area where the end users are and how you're going to address them. This is subjective. This means if you do a really good job, you could get up to 30 points. If you barely address or you skip over some of this and don't give us detail, then you won't be eligible for the full 30 points. You do not have to write a long essay. We got to keep in mind the people who are reviewing these are going to be reviewing a lot of applications. So please be very detailed, but also be concise in giving us the information of the needs that are there and how your project will meet them. A little bit more information on that is on the next slide. We have that, make sure that the benefits tie directly to what you state as needs and make sure that they're measurable. Let's say you're going to deliver advanced classes to a high school that can be used as dual credit. Tell us how many students are in that school. How many students will more than likely sign up for the dual credit courses and benefit. That's where you calculate how many are going to benefit. Make it measurable. All right, let's go right along to the next slide. And on it, I want to emphasize, we have a lot of people that just breeze right across this, but you need to include in this the evidence of participation in the application of people from the local communities. You can provide samples of or minutes from community meetings, public forums, copies of surveys you sent out. Please do not send us all of the surveys you sent or received back, but you get the idea that we want to know that the community wants and needs and is excited about you putting in this application and the possibility of an award coming to their area. You will also want to include any kind of letters that says how the community is supporting it, financially or non-financially. We do have to include letters in for the matching in another section. But if you've got somebody that is saying, okay, even though we can't match or provide you with financial support, we're going to do this. We're going to provide you with someone that's available to step in should one of your key players not be present at for a meeting. So there's a lot of ways that the community can support you, and we highly recommend that you convey that to us, because that does play into whether you get the full 30 points for the needs and benefits scoring criteria. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is where we talk about the matching, and indeed, yes, the matching is required 15% for everything except for, now you see down below where I was trying to get ahead of myself on the American Samoa, Guam, Virgin Islands. A match is not required from there, so you need to be sure to say that the application is from one of those locations, not just having an end user site. End user site there can get you special consideration points, but it will not exempt you from the match requirement. We prefer cash match. It's a little easier to administer, but we will accept in kind. But for in kind, there are some criteria that must be met. It must be new, non-depreciated equipment that hasn't been installed. We have to know when it's going to be purchased, specifically what it is, specifically where it will be used in the project, how it is eligible for the DLT program, and that it's going to meet the criteria of primary use for the program. And it cannot be from a vendor. We found a problem with vendor discounts and vendor supplied equipment not meeting the competitive requirements. So, and also future revenues. You can't say, okay, we're going to present this distance learning telemedicine project, and we're going to use the revenue that we get from reimbursements for doctor visits as our match. We cannot accept that. The match has to be available at the time the application is submitted. I'll go a little further into this in a minute when we're talking about using other grants for matches. But if any part of the in-kind match is for an ineligible purpose, let's just say you said, okay, we're going to donate so many salaries or so many months of internet connectivity, those are ineligible. So you're running the risk of not meeting the match requirement because we're going to have to disallow those particular items. So watch very carefully what you include in your match and that you meet all the criteria if you want to claim donation of in-kind match. All right, let's go to the next screen, please. And this is talking about federal funds. They're typically not eligible to be used as match for another federal program unless the source of those funds specifically state that they can be used as a match on other federal programs. The one that we do see are for counties in the Appalachia region, and those the ARC funds can be used. Be very, very careful. This award has to be available when you make the application, and then there's some more criteria for that. You've got to present a letter saying, you know, that it can be used for this, that this is the statute that says it can, and that it is available and there are no restrictions or limitations put on it, that it can be used for this project. You've got to also be careful because sometimes federal grants funds actually go down to the state, and then the state makes an award. This could be just a simple pass-through. And if it is a pass-through of federal funds that were not eligible to be used as a grant, then you run into the same situation. You have proposed some match that isn't eligible, so you may be missing your 15% requirement. If it is a non-federal grant, then you must include a copy of the announcement letter and all of the particulars about there being no limits or exclusions. And again, it has to be available at the time of the application. Okay, let's move a little bit further ahead. I'm a little bit better on time, I think, this week than I was last week, which is good because I want to do a little more justice to the scope of work. The scope of work only gets one slide in this presentation. However, please do not take that to equate that the scope of work is a minimal piece of the application. It's not. It's an extremely huge piece. In this, you're going to be telling us your specific activities, who's going to carry them out, the timeframes in which they're going to be accomplished, and it's going to include a line item budget for capital expenditures. I'll go a little bit deeper into the budget in just a minute, but I strongly recommend you use the sample budget worksheet that is provided. It is, all of the sample worksheets are provided are in Excel. We would love for you to send those to us in Excel format. It expedites our reviews because we can run some checks and balances without having to convert it to an Excel. If you would feel better about sending a PDF, send us the PDF and the Excel version. That would be great. I know a lot of people had rather provide a PDF version, and I understand that. But from a reviewer standpoint, Excel version is greatly appreciated. Okay, let's go to the next slide and let me talk a little deeper. Well, nope, let's go back. I keep forgetting this only has one slide. I need to tell you a few more things that are not listed on this slide. A few more very, very important things are paying special attention to the extra guidance in the application guide. Provide details on quantity, why you need the amount you need. Put some support in there how you came up with a cost per quantity. It is okay to include some quotes or estimates from vendors. That does not mean you have, if we approve your application, that doesn't mean you can actually go straight to that vendor and make those purchases. Please don't mistake that, because there are procurement rules that apply to non-federal entities. And we want to have everyone have a fair shot at this. But we do need to know what equipment you're buying, why you need the amount you need, exactly how they play into delivering the services you expect to deliver. Do not bundle items on a single line in your budget. We need to know the equipment on a separate line from the maintenance and support or warranty for that equipment. You don't just need to say warranty. It needs to be warranty for specific equipment. It also needs to say the time frame of the warranty. Is it a 3-year warranty? 3 years is all we can pay for. So if it's a 5-year warranty, please list, this is a 5-year warranty. We're only claiming 3 years of the total. So be very specific. And of course, when you finish with your budget from your scope of work, you need to round to whole dollars. If you don't, we're not going to toss you out for that, but that means we'll have to round it. Again, don't include salaries or internet service or delivery of service fees. Those are not eligible budget items. Now, again, just be extra cautious with your budget. Now I will go on to the next slide, which is financial information and sustainability. And this is a fairly brief topic. We have the fact that we need to know how you can successfully carry out the project, have the expertise and the financial background to do this and support the project through completion. Include all your assumptions. Tell us how it's going to be sustained after the grant period is over. That's again where Mariah mentioned if you are leasing equipment, we're only going to pay for the 3-year lease. We're only going to pay for the 3-year maintenance if you're purchasing. So tell us how these things are going to be sustained after the federal monies run out at the end of the 3-year period. We have on here describe the project's expenses in the project budget. There are really no expenses to be included in the budget because we are only asking for capitalized items. The only other items that are not necessarily capitalized are the licensing and the maintenance. We do ask that you have those in a 3-month package, and it can't be something that you're just gonna get for 1 year and then think about whether you're gonna get it for the next 2nd and 3rd year. You have to commit to getting it for 3 years for that to be fundable. Otherwise, we have to count it as operating expense. And then in that case, it's not fundable. More on all of this is in the application guide. You need to tell us if there's cost sharing arrangements between the hub and end user sites. There does not have to be, but if there is, we need to know what that is. And anything else that will play into this being a success and you being able to carry it forward. Let's go to the next slide, which talks just a little bit more about the statement of experience. What we're asking for here is, do you have the background to implement the project and carry it out? Have you done a project like this before? If you haven't, that's okay, but we need for you to explain to us how you are going to get the expertise and the human resources that are needed to make this a complete project. We don't want someone going into this without covering all of the bases. We don't need a resume from your top 5 paid executives. We don't even need a long resume on your IT specialist or on the person that is overseeing the whole project. We just need enough to know that the organization is capable of operating an educational or a healthcare endeavor that's being proposed in this grant application. Again, I said, if you don't have the expertise, that's okay, but tell us what you're going to do about that. Okay, let's get into another very important section, and that happens to be your telecommunications system plan. This is, again, something that doesn't have get a lot of attention, but it really should. The plan, you should give us a narrative, and I'll tell you again in a few minutes what goes into the narrative, and there should be a map or a diagram. It doesn't have to be from a professional mapping system. We need to know an overall map of your serving area, where the hubs will be, where the end user sites will be, and where the hub end user sites will be. This is very important for us to have a visual of the project, the breadth of how you're going to be serving any particular area. If you are not thorough throughout the telecommunications system plan, we may not be able to deem your project eligible. I mean, we have to fully understand what you're doing, how you're doing, and all the little nuances in order to be able to approve this. So let's go to the next screen and I'll tell you more about the narrative. For the narrative, we need to know the overall DLT network, the equipment that you are proposing to use, and if there's equipment that is required to make this successful that's already in place, you should tell us that as well. We don't want to see that on the budget, but we need to be convinced that everything is in place from A to Z to make this work. In the telecommunications system plan, you are going to go back and look at your scope of work budget that is by line item number, and you're going to tell us in this narrative what each line item is, more specific than the little detail you give us on the budget. It's important on the budget to have enough for us to judge if it's eligible. This detail goes even deeper than that and tells how it is necessary for the project, how it's used for more than 50% for this project. We've got to have justification and a discussion on the technical experts of why this equipment is needed and how it will play a role in the project. We also have to have in there a statement saying that this effort will not duplicate existing efforts. This also comes up again on your certifications, compliance certifications that I'll cover in a few minutes. We need to know the applicant's involvement in any previous or current grant applications. This could be, are you an end user site on a previous application? Did you get an award last year? We need to know this in order to be able to accurately judge whether or not this can go forward. If you are an awardee of a 2023 project, and anything in this 2024 project is contingent upon the 2023 project being successfully completed, we can't make an award. We have to award complete projects, not pieces of projects. So if there's some prerequisites, those must be met, and we must understand that in the application. We will fund, if you got one last year, if it is an absolute independent, distinct project serving different people for different purposes, that's okay. We can do that. But we don't need to have to guess when we go to review exactly what's there. All right, and I basically covered the system plan, map, and diagram. This slide gives you a little bit more information, but I think I covered it pretty well earlier. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, which is the compliance with federal statutes. For a single signing application, we'll show on the next slide that there are 4 of the forms that actually get attested to on the DLT application checklist, which again, I'll mention a little further in a few minutes. But if you are a single signer application, meaning there's only going to be one owner of equipment, then you will sign off on the certification regarding the flood, relocation assistance, architectural barriers, and non-duplication on the application checklist. And this, of course, is on our website under the To Apply tab. Now, if it's going to be multiple signers, if there's going to be multiple owners of equipment, everyone other than the fiscal agent submitting the application and signing the checklist will also need to go to the application guide and pick out these 4 certificates and sign them and send them with the application. If you're going to own equipment, you have to certify with this. And if you're not certifying it on the application checklist, then you must certify to it just by giving us those forms with a signed and dated signature from someone authorized to do so. All right, let's go to the next screen on the compliance. This is where a person who is a single signer or the physical agent will sign off on these particular statutes and regulations. Many of the statutes and regulations that you had to fill out in the past are now covered under the Sam.gov representations and certifications. So that's why you have to have those in order to be eligible as well. But for a single signer, you will simply check these boxes. Of course, you need to read and make sure that you know what this is all about. If it is in a flood zone, there's additional information that you must cover, and this must be signed, dated, and we must have the title of the person doing so, because it must be someone who can certify for the entity that they are indeed going to abide by these statutes and regulations. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. This is the evidence of legal existence, and I want to hammer this home. We've run into a lot of problems with this year. The big deal is you have to prove your legal existence and authority to contract with the federal government. Let's go to the next slide, and you'll see if you are a corporation or an LLC, we want to see your articles of incorporation and the statement from your Secretary of State saying that you are in good standing. That will satisfy this requirement. If you are not a corporation, if you are a school district, we need documentation showing when the school district or the hospital district or the university was established. This will confirm for us the legal name of the entity. Now, if you are a school district that has combined a few times with other school districts and changed your name, we're going to need that paper trail. or at least documentation showing the most recent legal name. At some point, the names in Sam.gov are supposed to reflect all legal names. They're not there yet. So we have to still collect this evidence of legal existence. And like I said earlier, the SAM representation and certifications covers a lot of the other criteria. The name in SAM must be the entity name, the UEI, and these must match the documents that you provide that support your legal existence. And as Mariah stated earlier, you should always be using your exact legal name on any official business. I know it's easy to get into the habit of shortening things, leaving off the Inc. for incorporated, or not spelling it out when it was originally spelled out, or abbreviating words such as department. Please give us your legal entity name that matches your documents proving you're in legally exist, and make sure that that gets on the SF 424 under the block that says legal name. Okay, with that, let's jump right through the environmental section. This is important, but we don't dwell much on it because very few of our projects require environmental questionnaires. Every project requires an environmental impact survey or narrative telling us that there will be no environmental impact. However, if there is broadband facilities included in the budget, there must be an environmental questionnaire that is filled out telling us exactly what's going to be impacted, and you have to have environmental clearance before you can start your project. I mean, just because we award you a project and you get your legal documents and get back to us and we get ready to send you the letter saying your funds have been released, if your environmental has not been cleared and you are building broadband facilities, we cannot release those funds. I mean, it's going to sit here. And so the sooner we know if you're doing broadband facilities, the better. So make sure that that is something that comes across loud and clear in your application. And again, even if you're not going to have any environmental impact, you have to say that in the application. All right, consultation with the state director. Oh, let me go back. I did forget one little thing on the proof of legal existence. That does not apply to federally recognized tribes. I don't think I have that on the slide, but it needs to be known that we do not have to have legal existence from a tribe. Now we can jump back to consultation with the state director. The state director, the tribes are not 100% required to get a letter from the state director or consult with the state director, but as a matter of courtesy, a tribe should. This is just letting the USDA Rural Development State Director know what's going on and what funding is taking place or proposed to take place in their state. For everyone else, a state director's letter or confirmation that you have consulted with the state director must be included in the application. And you should include for the state director a copy of the executive summary and the proposed grant and match amounts. You need to do this early. Don't wait till the week before these are due to be turned in, and contact your state director. Again, if you are going to have end user sites in multiple states, you need a letter or proof of consultation with every state you have an end user site residing. The state director letter is basically asking them, do they know of any other funding available for this area? Have they made any awards to this area that might make your application ineligible? And it's not necessarily a letter of support saying we support your efforts. It's okay if they do say that, but it's more or less that you are making them aware that you are putting this application in, especially since it comes through the national office instead of through their office. Okay, now we've gotten through the consultation with the USDA State Director. Now we're ready for the application submission. Here I want to touch again on the resources available. You've got the application guide, the checklist, the worksheets, a sample of the tribal resolution of consent. You've got all these items under the DLT website under the To Apply tab. Let's go to the next screen, please. This is the application checklist that I mentioned. Again, it is not a requirement, but if you don't do this, then you've got to provide us with something certifying that you have included all this and agree to the compliance items in section J. This is a good test for you to go back if you indeed follow it and say, yes, I have included standard form 424. Yes, I have included a completed site worksheet. If you're just going to go down there and check complete, you're losing the benefit of this worksheet. Again, it must be signed and dated by someone with the authority in the business. If you don't provide us with the title and you don't provide us with something showing that the person that has signed has authorization to sign for the entity, then we very well may have to disallow because it wasn't confirmed or committed. Again, back with the matching requirements have to have a letter of support, confirmed commitment support, unless it is from the applicant. Those matching letters, again, there's information in the application guide saying what they need to say. It needs to have a specific dollar figure. It needs to be signed by someone who can commit the organization to making that donation and confirm that the donation is, not contingent upon anything. Okay, once you get through with this application checklist, you're going to be ready to hit the ground running. Submit your application by April the 29th. Do not wait to the last minute. We don't want there to be any kind of glitch in the Grants.gov system that might cause your application not to be submitted on time. Be sure that your Sam.gov registration includes your financial assistance representations and certification, and that your Sam.gov registration is active on or before April the 29th. If it is going to expire sometime in the next few months, please put on your calendar that this must be kept active at all times when you are conducting business with us. All right, let's go to the next slide, and on it, let's move one more to the resources. You've got the DLT website that has all of this information on it. You have your general field representatives are actually people in your area, in your state, designated to help you on the local level. If you've got some really complicated questions, they cannot help you do your application, but they can help you answer some pretty complicated technical questions about if you have some really unique circumstances. They can give you guidance on check this, this, and this before you go any further, because we don't want to waste your time and resources. Another valuable tool is the Contact Us. You can submit technical questions and request assistance through the Contact Us website. So now that you know all about this and all of the resources, you're going to go out and you're going to make sure that your Sam.gov registration is taken care of. You're going to go out and make sure that once that's all taken care of, your Grants.gov registration account is current, active, and available. If you get a warning sign in Grants.gov that this is a bad request, that means there's some registration criteria needed for you in order to enter information. And unfortunately, the USDA staff cannot help you with that. And we can't help you with Sam.gov. Those are independent platforms, and you'll have to contact each of them individually should you run into snags. They both have help desk and support mechanisms, and Grants.gov says they're available 24/7 except on federal holidays, and the Sam.gov has something similar. Before I jump into the Q&A, I do want to say thank you so much to Mariah for presenting the first portion of this, and for all of the support personnel that we have behind the scenes. We have Maggie Wilkins and Scott Staresic. I practiced his name before this, I promise, and I still think I didn't get it quite right. But anyway, they are from the Innovation Center. They have supported us through the webinar and all of the particulars that go into making it happen. I also want to thank David Chancellor and Alexa Petty. They are behind the scenes in our policy and outreach division. And David is going to moderate the questions that will be coming to me. Mariah, David, Alexa, and there may be others in the background that have been answering questions in the chat. So now I want to thank each of them again. Thank you for your attendance and your participation. And I want to send this over to David to open up the verbal questions session.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. I'll be helping with the Q&A. Please use the Q&A feature if you want to add in any questions now. And just a reminder, if we don't get to your question, or if it's not answered to the degree that you're seeking, please feel free to reach out using the Contact Us feature or your GFR General Field Representative. I've added links in the chat so that you can access those. And we are working to post a recording of this webinar as soon as possible, but it does take time. It will be added to our website under the To Apply tab when it's ready, and it'll be on YouTube. And with that, let's start with the questions. Just want to ask a first quick one to you, Teresa. Are there any examples or samples of submitted and successful grant packages that people can see?
No, the only thing that people can see are the publicly releasable project descriptions that we mentioned earlier. The actual sample of a successful complete package is going step by step through the application guide and checking off everything on your application checklist. We do not provide anybody else's information, and we don't even give you faux information because every circumstance is completely different. So the answer, sorry, no, but you can go read descriptions on the website and walk through very closely and be very detail oriented when you go through the application guide.
Terrific. Thank you. Moving on then, I wanted to ask you, Teresa, can you provide any clarification or clarity on the coastal barrier restrictions that are mentioned?
Okay, the coastal barrier restrictions are on the DLT map, and it is just a little sliver along the coast. The East Coast, I know it covers everything from Maine all the way down through the coast of Texas. I'll be real honest with you, I don't know if it goes further out west because we run into Mexico. I'm not sure about up the West Coast, but it is a very narrow band. And we're just saying you cannot put equipment in those locations. Now, on the map, you will probably have to drill down to a very, very, very close level to confirm that you're not in one of those sites, if you're anywhere near it. But the DLT map will clarify all that for you. They're the sites you can go and look by address.
Excellent. Moving on, we have a couple of budget type questions I'd like to ask you. And so the first one, specifically for equipment, does the exact make, model need to be declared or just the type? And here's an example. They have a budget for a laptop. Can they just write laptop, or should they write, brand X laptop, etc.? The SKU, that kind of detail.
Well, we do want you to describe, and if it's something that there's a lot of different variations, like video conference platform, we don't want you to say video conference platform. We want you to give us an example, because platform A might only have a limited amount of ability, functionality. B might have other functionality. So you're going to need to give us enough information. You do not have to quote the vendor, the brand, and you will not be expected to go with the vendor and brand. We do realize that in a year's time from when you submit this to when you get to begin implementing it, models have changed, the industry has upgraded. There may be a much more economical, robust solution to what you are planning to implement. So any scope changes or any significant changes to your original plans has to be approved by us, but we understand that things are going to change. Just give us enough information to don't be too generic, but you don't have to give us the serial number.
Perfect. That does answer a related question too. So I'll move on. Seeing one or two about these, can you talk more about the match letter? I thought you talked about nicely during the presentation, but is there an example match letter, or do you have any other guidance there?
Okay, in the application guide under the match section, it tells exactly what has to be there. You can include additional details if you choose, but if it is a cash match, it has to be on letterhead or with something proving that the person signing it has the authority to obligate the donor. It has to include the exact dollar figure, and it has to state that there are, it is to be used for this application, and that there are no restrictions or limitations placed on it. Now that's for cash. Now, as I said, if it all comes from the applicant themselves, they need to state that in the application, but they don't have to write a letter saying that they're submitting their application, naming themselves as the match donor is their commitment. There are other requirements if it is in kind, because we run into problems of somebody wanting to use a piece of old equipment that, we just happened to get somewhere else and might have actually been funded under some other grant, and they want to use that. It has to be new, non-depreciated, uninstalled. We have to know when it's purchased and how you came up with a dollar value if you are proposing in kind. And again, that would have to be, if it's from anyone other than the applicant, that would have to be signed and documented that the person is eligible to obligate the donor.
Excellent. Also a match question for cash. After there's an award, do you know if the use of the match is front loaded? In other words, we have to spend the match funds and then request reimbursement, or is it more prorated? Do you have any sense?
Very, very good question. For this program, and probably this program only, if it is complete cash match, we prorate. Like you send us invoice, which you do have to send invoices for reimbursements. You send us an invoice for $100,000. We're going to send you back the federal portion, which is 85, and you're going to basically have already expended the 15. We will do reimbursements on paid or unpaid invoices, but you have to have received the equipment in order for us to reimburse you.
Great. So moving out of the budget area, just as kind of a general question from someone, if the intent of our project is to promote telemedicine equipment, is to provide telemedicine equipment directly to patients in rural areas, how do we document that in the spreadsheet?
Okay, we are not looking for promoting telemedicine. We are looking for specific delivery. So if you want to request mobile pieces of equipment. I'll just use a Bluetooth compatible glucose monitor. First thing that came to my brain. And you want to provide that to a rural resident. You have to go ahead and describe the rest of the project. Where is the hub site? Where is the monitoring? Where is the medical service going to be provided that connects to that rural person? We can't build just a network. We've got to know what service you're delivering, how it's being delivered, where it originates, where it ends, all of the particulars. I don't know if that really hit at the heart of your question, but we need to know from A to Z, the beginning of the project, where service originates and where it ends, and everything in between.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully this is a quick one. Just someone's asking, do we have any sense? They've noticed the DLT program occurs with some frequency every now and then. Do we have any sense on when the next one is available?
Yes, we try to have an annual funding cycle each year, open application window. There are a lot of factors in the background that play into when this can take place that are way beyond our agency's control. In 2021, I don't remember the exact opening and closing dates, but I think it felt somewhat like this year. In 2022, we did not have an application window for DLT because we had all of our resources supporting the Reconnect broadband program. So we had to forego the DLT application window that year. So when we rolled into the DLT application window for 2023, it worked out fairly well that we got to open the window early. I believe it opened at the end of November and closed at the end of January, which is what we prefer because that gives us a lot more time to review applications. And we had more money because we did not have a window in 2022. So we had a lot of applications, a lot of reviews, a lot of awards. So this year, we could not get the funding notice out as early as we wanted because, again, we're running a lot of programs. We can't open all of our programs and close all of them at the exact same time. So the Community Connect program opened, the DLT application window opened. Now the Community Connect window closed. Now the DLT window's closing. The the Reconnect application window opened last week and it'll be closing in 60 days. So we do not have a set time frame. I can just assure you we want to get it open as early as we can in the fiscal year. And we try extremely hard to have the applications awards determined and obligated by the end of the fiscal year, and not the calendar year. And even if we can't get the announcements out, we want that done by the end of the year, September 30th. It may be all the way to the end of the calendar year before those announcements get publicly made. That's a whole nother topic. But that gives you a gist of how we do and why we try each year to improve on what kind of information we collect and how we collect it and how we review it. The review process is extremely manual, and it consumes a lot of hours and a lot of dedicated employees grueling through it to make it as fair and competitive. And we still have, of course, things that get through on the budgets that we didn't catch that shouldn't have gone. And we're human, but there's a lot that plays into it. It's going to be a real push this year to have the obligations made by the end of September. But we will. We always come through.
Thank you. That's a great answer. And we're running out of time, so this may be the last one, but we'll see. This question is just what documentation should be submitted to support the information we provide in the special consideration tab of the DLT worksheets? So there's the special consideration tab. They're asking just what documentation should be submitted to support it. Can be part of the application.
Okay, you need to provide us with the addresses of the end users that fall in those eligible areas, and all of those eligible areas are on the DLT map. It would be great if you wanted to take a screenshot showing that on, from our DLT map and include it, but if you don't, it's perfectly fine just to give us the locations of the end user sites that fall in within those layers on the DLT map. And I will caution again, there's different levels of transparency. Some things you have to zoom way, way, way into almost the street level to find what you're looking for. So don't just go take a quick glance at, 5,000 feet and say, oh, this doesn't apply. Zoom way down into the DLT map to make sure that you're getting credit if credit is due. And of course, with the tribes, those layers are on the map as well. And the DLT map is very robust and pretty much provides you with what you need.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more or two more, if they're quick. So this one seems quick. Can we just confirm, based on the matching conversation, can we confirm that if an applicant is using an in-kind match, they are not required to provide the match letter? They're using in-kind match.
Well, if they are providing an in-kind match and it is the applicant, we still have to have all of the detailed information of the make, kind, model, when it's going to be purchased, how you establish the dollar figure. Basically, if it's from the applicant, they're going to have to show when it was purchased and that it's new and unused and not installed. It's basically the same as saying they're committing to go out and buy it with cash.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, last more, just keep pushing it. If there's software required for medical remote monitoring, is that an eligible cost? So medical remote monitoring software, is that an eligible cost?
Yes, if it is in conjunction with equipment that is eligible and being purchased in this project. And the remote monitoring equipment has to have interactive capability, meaning it can connect a rural patient with a live professional service provider, medical provider, doctor, psychologist, whatever. And for it to be eligible, it can only be for the 3 years of the application, and it cannot be for equipment already purchased. And seems like I'm missing one more component. There may be a limit to that. I'm not sure about that, but you do indeed have to support whatever you put in the application.
Excellent. And we are at time. And if we missed your question, which, there are some open questions, we tried to go in chronological order. Again, please go to the Contact Us website or your GFR, excellent resource. I just want to thank our host, thank the panel for presenting, and I'll turn it over to the host to close out.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our webinar today. I want to give a special thanks to Mariah and Teresa. And with that, we conclude today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right.